I'll be 30 this year. It's like a 30-year-old looking back on like who's kind of shaped me as an adult.
Yeah.
My father, my father was huge for me. My baseball coach was, really big for me. And then it's these guys I've been working for the last 5-6 years, leaving athletics, joining the professional world.
Yeah.
Been really lucky. Welcome back for episode 7 of Inside Moves. We're here in New York City at the Slam headquarters, sitting down with Andrew Lachlan, the founder of Sauna House. Thanks for coming, Andrew.
Yeah.
You are wary of venture.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely, right?
Yeah.
I think that like as somebody who, JDS Sports is kind of not necessarily venture capital. Like we do behave like a venture capital firm in a lot of ways, but just the way that we're set up is more family office. We can be more of like a permanent capital source rather than like we need to return and perform and exit stuff, right? So in those senses, we are different from traditional VC. But that's the world we play in, right? So I'm conscious too of like, what are the negative sides of all of this stuff going on around us?
Yeah.
And I think you even had it like in your investment pitch, it's like what we're seeking, right? And you're wary of it. What was it like when you came up to New York and like got to hang out with us and got you comfortable with JDS Sports?
Yeah, well, it is such an interesting world navigating, taking your first investment, your real first investment check. And, my board advisor now, Nathan Edgerly, has seen the world of private equity and VC very thoroughly. Mm-hmm. And he knew what my long-term vision was, and he helped advise me on what kind of groups of people we should be talking to. And when I was introduced to JDS, I knew it was sort of VC meets family office.
Right.
And I quickly knew that you guys were also business operators. Like you run Slam Magazine and other businesses, and you actively invest and advise your other investments. And seeing that style really attracted me because you guys are sports people. I grew up an athlete. Ice hockey and lacrosse were my big sports for me. But knowing that you guys, so many of the other things that have happened to me in the investment space, like while I was dating capital partners, it was always finance people. They always had the same questions. And, when I asked them like what the long-term plans are, like they need certain exits and that's their business model. Right. And there's nothing really wrong with it in any way. Like, I don't want to speak. It has its place. It serves a purpose in the economy for sure. But my vision for Sauna House was to be a long-term hold. I want to run the company for a long period of time. And I wanted to have creative freedom to bring in like my true vision of the brand. And JDS, when I got to New York and spent time with all of you in person, we had done a lot of digital dating at that point, but it felt like family, and like you shared your personal story about wanting to go back and try and play pro ball and the supportiveness from the JDS group to allow you to go back and give it another go. And then they welcome you right back in, right? Yeah. And no, that's wonderful. That's family style. And I wanted a group of people that I didn't feel like I had to go into a boardroom and like present myself to. I wanted to go into a board and just be myself. And that's a core value of mine, is just integrity and authenticity. And I think that a lot of times, if I was in a PE or a VC board meeting, I would absolutely be pitching the ball to the group of people, trying to manipulate and steer their thinking in order to get what I want. And that's not what I want to do. I wanted to maintain creative freedom, and JDS was super supportive of allowing me to have creative freedom. And I think you guys got the terms you wanted, and I got the creative freedom I wanted, and that's exciting for me.
Yeah, no, you clearly have a vision. Spending that time with you was cool, because to me it's more than just like it's Sauna cold plunge, but it's wellness in general, and that has like a lot of different components to it that I think you're kind of tying into Sauna House. But I guess when did sauna cold plunge kind of become you? Like when did, like now it's you, it's your vision, it's something that your whole life is. Yeah. When did that happen?
It's really strange to say that. Like growing up, I never thought I would be in like the spa industry, right? Like it's almost hysterical to think of looking back, you know. But it happened 2013, 2012 time period. I was a couple years sober at the time, and I had struggled with anxiety and depression through getting sober. And a friend of mine had introduced me to cold water therapy. Mm-hmm. He had suffered bunch of concussions while we played competitive sports together. Mm-hmm. Our friendship was rekindled when I moved back to San Francisco, and he was living there at the time, and he was like, man, I'm using cold water therapy on a daily basis to treat my concussions, TMJ, sleep apnea, chronic pain, these issues. And I was like, okay, that's interesting, whatever. I was playing ball hockey in San Francisco at the time, and ice hockey and tennis. I was eating well, I was exercising, but I was still struggling with like my mental health. And I started doing it with him just because he invited me to do it. And I quickly noticed like my inflammation levels went down really quickly. And I think inflammation is a huge problem in society. Lots of things cause it. Yeah. But for me, getting inflammation levels down using cold water therapy really helped me day of. And then over like a longer period of time, I noticed like, wow, this is like really impacting my overall well-being. Like I feel good all the time. Like I feel like I'm a kid again. Yeah. And that's when it kicked off. And I mean, we were talking off camera before the pod, and we talked about Tim Ferriss. And I remember the moment I listened to this podcast, for some reason, I lived on Potrero Hill. I was walking up to the park with my dogs, and I was listening to like episode 10, 11, or 12. It was the first 20. And he had Dr. Rhonda Patrick on. Mm-hmm. And she teed off about the 20-year study about sauna in Finland and cardiovascular disease reduction and lots of other health benefits of regular sauna bathing. And I was like, weird, right? Like I grew up in Northeast Philly. I'm not a sauna bather. I didn't grow up in that culture. But 2 weeks later, I'm wandering into this new apartment building that I moved into, and down by the trash room, there's like a small window with a sauna in it, and no one in the building used it. It was an old building, and I cleaned out this room and turned it on, and it worked. And then like me and a couple of friends who lived in the building, we started hanging out in the sauna, and it quickly became like our third place. Mm-hmm. And so I had sauna and cold water therapy at home because there was a courtyard pool that they didn't heat, which was freezing cold in San Francisco most of the year. So I had sauna cold plunge in my life all the time, and I wasn't thinking about it, right? Like I wasn't thinking, oh, this is social connection without technology. This is good for my mind, body, and spirit. This is a natural third place to have conversations about life, relationships, work, whatever. Back then, like none of those things were on my mind. Yeah. But now as I think about crafting the experience that we offer at Sauna House, like I do want to check all these boxes for the general public and foster community in a unique way around using sauna and cold therapy as like the activity you do while we foster this community. Yeah, community is like one of the biggest pieces to it, I think. I don't have a sauna house by me here in New Jersey. We gotta fix that. But I have a gym that is got a really nice sauna cold plunge setup, and it's like one of my favorite places to just meet new people, which is kind of weird to say. Yeah. But I think just hanging out in there is half of the benefit that I find there. It's something social to do. It's a break from me behind my laptop or whatever else I'm doing. Yeah. Can you talk a bit about that? Just, how important the community aspect of what you're building is to the business. Yes, but first, when you're at the gym, I imagine, what is the percentage of people wearing like AirPods or headphones? Ooh, that's a good question. I would say 50%. Okay.
Yeah, 50%.
And then when you're at the sauna cold plunge area, it goes down to.
Oh, so okay. When I'm in the gym, I'd say it's 100%.
Right.
And then when I'm in the sauna cold plunge, it goes down to about 50%. Where I'd say
Right.
half the time I'm in there, it's like, okay, I get it. This dude's in his own world. Like he's doing his thing. And then the other half of the time, it's like, oh, there's 5 of us in here. Mm-hmm. Somebody's talking about something, and everybody is welcome to join in if you're paying attention. Yeah.
Yeah. It helps that the sauna is really hot and it like can kill your technology. And it helps that like getting in water will kill your technology. Yes. So to speak on that in regards to community, right? It's stripping away technology. Mm-hmm. And then you're sharing an experience, right? And bonds are forged in adversity. And so like you're cheering strangers on through cold water bathing, which is hard and uncomfortable, but like you have someone there for you and you don't even know them. And it's like, why do they care about you? Yeah. And that makes you feel good, right? Intuitively. And so, like when you think about building community in any kind of setting, right? Like the set and setting in any wellness experience, is either going to cater toward fostering more community or it's going to cater toward isolation experiences. And like big box gym, to your point, like 100% of people have AirPods in or headphones on. Like I just got out of the subway here and I'm not a subway user on the regular. So I was like down in the subway and I'm like, which one am I meant to take? I'm like, can't talk to them. The subway's crazy.
Subway's crazy.
Like I couldn't even ask anyone for directions because everyone's just like living in their own world.
It's a New York thing as well, a bit.
Yeah.
But I think
it speaks to the loneliness epidemic, right? Like the Surgeon General brought it up this last year. Is like we have a loneliness epidemic, and it's like, well, why? We're more connected than we've ever been. Well, maybe if you're too connected and you have too many balls in the air at once, you're actually isolating. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's going on in a little bit. And so, at Sauna House, we track technology-free hours that we create, right? And at one store last year, we created 7.6 years of tech-free time.
Wow.
Right? And if an app has value based on how much time someone spends on it, because of how much technology is involved in our life now, the value of real world experiences is skyrocketing because, the value, time value, right? And so if you're not on your screen and then like, say like an app values my time, if I'm on their app for 4 minutes a day, that values their company at $300,000 more. Yeah. Like what is the value I'm creating by keeping people off that technology and experiencing the real world? And so I think it just has like the scales are turning because technology has become so ever present. Mm-hmm. And I'm not an anti-tech person really. Like I use an iPhone, I have Wi-Fi at my house, but I think it's about setting boundaries and intentionality around it and being really curious and thoughtful about your use with it that matters so much.
Do you participate like in these group sessions like with your customers? Are you like really embedded into
I go to Sauna House. Depends on the week. Sometimes I'm there just once, but sometimes I'm there 3 times. And it also depends on what I need. As a founder, I'm speaking a lot now, right? Mm-hmm. I'm on calls, I'm on meetings, I'm doing podcasts, so I'm talking a lot. And so what I need sometimes is to use one of our private rooms at Sauna House where maybe I'm just with one person and I'm getting less stimulus, not more. Yeah. Whereas other people are doing tech coder jobs and they're by themselves for 8 hours a day coding and they really need to connect and talk to other human beings, right? To recharge. And so at Sauna House, we have some public bathing space. The main offering is a big public bathing space. And then we also have private traditional saunas with their own cold pools so that people who need a little more rest, reprieve, privacy for their own well-being, we can offer that as well.
Yeah, that's me. I mean, I go sometimes a week where I talk to Matt, PRC, and Miguel on Zoom. And luckily, like I said, this I just moved and there's a gym by my house that has the sauna cold plunge and I crave it. I'm like, I got to get out of the apartment where I'm sitting here just staring at my laptop and talk to somebody. And these people probably think I'm like crazy because I'm just I need some connection, you know?
Yeah,
That's the
it's
world now. It's the work from home life is awesome in some ways and then really strange in some ways.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And we're all evolving with this, right? Like
Yeah.
we're playing this on the fly. Like,
Yeah.
it's hard now even to remember what it was like. But
Yeah.
I mean, to speak to that just a little bit, like I live in Asheville. Sauna House's head base is Asheville, North Carolina. We were just hit by a hurricane.
Yeah.
And cell comms were down for 2 days. No internet, no electricity, no water, no power. And message boards came up immediately outside churches and all these places. People were writing messages and information. And it was so cool to see how hand-to-hand communication came back and how you could mobilize with hand-to-hand and how were you getting your information without technology, because it really wasn't there. Some of the hotels downtown had Starlink, and there'd be, hundreds of people around the Starlink gatherings because there was no way to get information or share anything. And so it was like a step back in time last week to experience that, and I'm still processing it. We don't need to go deep into that right now, but it was cool to see what life was like just not that long ago in all reality, when we weren't this connected.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of, Hurricane Sandy. We kind of had this conversation. I'm from the Jersey Shore. Hurricane Sandy hit us when I was a senior in high school. And it was horrible. But there was some like nice things that came out of it, I guess. We were out of school for like 2 weeks, which was a good part of it, as a 17-year-old kid.
You're definitely telling me my age right now. You're like out of school during Sandy.
I was out of school. Yeah. Yeah. 29 now. But like me and my friends and I, it was 2 weeks where there was no school. One of my buddies had electricity, Wi-Fi, hot water. And I still feel bad. Sorry, Mom and Dad. I kind of abandoned my family. I was like, I'm going to my buddy's house and stayed with him. But it was simpler. Totally. 2 weeks, and we just kind of hung out as four buddies, and we hang on to that. Yeah. I'm sure that people are hurting in Asheville, but there's going to be some, bonds strengthened through this. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And a lot of people go through like Hurricane Katrina or these other catastrophes, and they miss it. Yeah. Right. They afterward they miss it. Like. Yeah. You realize how grateful you are for the simple things in life, like a hot shower, right? Like, which is something we've worked really hard over the last week to provide more of and more information of like where you can get one of those.
Yeah.
Like, and food, right? Like, well, the night before I left town, a friend of mine is a chef and his house had power, no water, but we all cooked dinner and he cooked dinner for us and we sat by candlelight and shared a meal, and it was one of the best meals I've had in a long time. I was extraordinarily grateful for it. We had just gone through 7 days of like really hard work, like sun up, sun down, like crazy, wild experiences, and everybody was sharing their stories about it. And bonds were forged, and I think that we'll all look back on this time as something we do miss in some ways, as you will always remember your experiences with your four buddies in Sandy. Yeah.
How is the actual business going? You guys have to be closed, and like what's the timeline like on that?
Yeah, well, we don't know. Yeah. So the water infrastructure that was damaged in Asheville is like a very serious situation. In Western North Carolina, like people think, oh, it's bad, but it's not that bad. It's like, I think public schools are saying something like 8 weeks till they reopen.
Wow.
And the city won't give a timeline on water being restored because the damage is so catastrophic that like they're bringing crews in from Canada, and it's just very significant. So the company in Asheville, our main store that's been supporting all of our growth thus far, is closed. It will be closed probably 2 months, and we were forced to let go of all of our operating staff there, which is very painful. For all of us, we have an incredible team there, and to let them go is tough. I hope that as many of them come back to work as still live in Asheville when we
Yeah.
get back open. But the benefits in these scenarios are helpful from the government and aid programs, and if we try and keep them employed, they don't qualify for that stuff.
Right.
So
Right.
we're refocusing our energy. As you know, like Durham and Charlotte are getting close to go live. We have a pop-up in Durham that opened last week. It was really well received. I want to say shout out to the Durham community for all their donations. We picked up donations as well and transported them back to Asheville last week. And then with the empty trailer, we filled up over 100 living plants in our Asheville store, and we brought them all out because there's no water, so they were all going to die. So plant rescue mission and goods and services into the community. The pop-up, we doubled the size of it. So we're trying to allocate our resources and our remaining team, our best group of people that still work in the company. We got temporary housing for a lot of our employees in Durham. So Durham is now short-term headquarters because that store is opening in the next 45 days. And then Charlotte opens right behind that. So we doubled the size of the pop-up. Some friends at Voyager Sauna and Cedar and Stone Sauna hooked us up.
Nice.
We have 2 big mobile trailers working on the pop-up to help ramp these stores and generate revenue so that we can continue to grow and cut the losses. You know, we're not it's tough. These are challenges, right? But they're also opportunities for learning. And our team has learned a tremendous amount in the last 7 to 9 days.
I bet.
I mean, we were in Durham for a strategy session, and Matt was there from your team,
Yep.
and we spent 2 days with our leadership crew and our Nathan Edgerly, our board advisor, and we came out of it wondering some things about pop-up and whether we wanted to try more of it, and we were debating that very heavily. And then I drove home from that into the rain, and then all hell broke loose, so to speak. And but now we're trying the pop-up in a new way, and we're putting more resources into it, and we're doing it bigger and better, and it's a lot more fun this way. So while I'm like grieving and super sad and hurting on one hand, like I'm an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs are forward-thinking people. They want to solve problems and have vision. And I hope that the city of Asheville is really thoughtful with the redevelopment plans. Like, we haven't had bike lanes, and like there's so many cyclists in Asheville, but nobody wants to ride because it's not safe. And now we have an opportunity to rebuild a city with incredible bike lane access, incredible greenway parks. And so I hope that people are really thoughtful and we deploy capital in the city in a way that, you know, Asheville has always been weird and unique and really cool.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a way to like just elevate the game, right?
Yeah.
We've got a unique opportunity to do something different in that city. And, you know, I'm using the same kind of thinking in the company. We have a unique opportunity to do something different in the company right now. And, yeah, we're going to do that from now through the end of the year. And I think that what we've already seen with the pivoting is really exciting. And I think that what we learn over the next 60 to 90 days will be really influential in the strategy for the following year. So it's been a challenge, but one I like solving problems.
No doubt. The culture in Asheville is pretty unique, right? It's kind of like I guess, mountain town, right?
Mountain town.
When I think of Asheville, I think kind of like granola, like people that like being
Definitely.
outside, like yeah.
Definitely.
Is that a perfect fit for a sauna house and like the vibe that you're setting?
I think it was an incredible community. Like when I launched Sauna House in 2019, we opened. Sauna Cold Plunge was like getting to be a thing, but it wasn't anything like it is now. Now it's like everything, right? Like in the wellness space, like, and Asheville's alternative, right? It's always been an alternative thinking town where artists and creatives.
Alternative. That's a better way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Artists, creatives, musicians, and performance athletes all come together to live an alternative lifestyle that's much more connected to nature, right? We have incredible national parks all around us and state parks. Mountain biking is huge. Trail running is huge. And I'm very lucky to have that access to nature. I will say, like, it's not like, I think our offering is mainstream. Like, what we've created now is ready for the general public in every community. And I think there's certain markets that are more ideal for our optimal audience, right? Of course, right? And there's places that are strategic from building a brand perspective, and then there's places that are strategic from a investment side of making a new store. But we have our top cities that we want to grow into, and I will say, like, the psychographics of those cities have a lot of crossover with the Asheville community.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too. That Matt has been to one of your stores, and his take was, this is going to be like ultra fit people, high performance athletes that want to treat their body after they're super beat up.
Yep.
And his finding was that there are all different kinds of walks of life in here. It's the artist, musician, the athlete, old, young, and that kind of, I think, was big for us in, this is going to work in a lot of different places.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. Yeah, I realize that too. Like, I'm an athlete, but I love the customer. So sometimes I just sit at the bar at Sauna House and talk to customers because I'm curious. Why do you come? Like, who are you?
Yeah.
Right? Like, we had, I think last year or something, 10,000 unique visitors to one store.
That, yeah.
Right? That's a lot of uniques.
Yeah.
And it's like, people are coming because they're suffering in some way, and they need connection, and they need to solve this suffering problem.
Yeah.
And you've probably heard me say that. I'll say it again, but like, there's 4 states of consciousness. You can have a restless mind and an uncomfortable body, like pain in the body and a restless mind. So that's like the worst state. Like, body and mind both are suffering. And then you can have, the mind is satisfied and content, but the body is in physical pain. And then you can have the opposite, where the body is comfortable and relaxed, but the mind is restless and irritable and discontent. And then you can have the most optimal state, which is like a flow state, or a feeling of no suffering, right? So the mind and body are just in harmony, and they feel wonderful together. And I think that what we do, when you like circulate through the process of cleansing yourself in the shower first, like, we require showering in our facility before anyone enters. It really helps with cleanliness. And then they're going on this journey through sauna and cold water therapy together, not forcefully. There's no guide or anything. You do it under your own time, but you're going on this journey, and then you're coming out, and the body, most customers end up in the 4th state of consciousness, which is the most desirable state. The problem is, we just go about getting there in all kinds of weird ways in modern society. We mix pleasure with this state, right? Because when you get a dopamine hit from, alcohol or drugs or sex or any of these things, a lot of the desire is really pursuing this 4th state of consciousness, but we just don't have awareness of like where we are. And so I think if society is going to evolve, it's like we're in a period of enlightenment with psychedelics and like mindfulness, meditation, breath work, all of these things. Well, it's like, can you be aware of like where your body and mind is at right now? And then step 2 is like, can you do something that's not destructive to yourself in order to get back into a more comfortable state of being, where you feel like a productive, pain-free member of society?
Yeah. When did this start? Like, the way that you're talking right now, a lot of people are like getting introspective and trying to find like the healthiest way to find this state, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like this is everywhere. Like, people are seeking these answers. When did this start? I feel like this is kind of new.
I think so too. And that's a great question. I haven't thought deeply about it, but off the cuff, I think it started during the period of social media coming up, and like our technology, like iPhone use going up, like screen time just like exploding. We maybe go from like 2 hours of screen time a day to 12 to 14 hours of screen time a day. I think that caused a lot of this suffering, right? Like your body's not happy when you sit all day. And your mind becomes restless and irritable. And so I think that some early folks were observing this, and it was there. I think like a lot of movements, it's a lot of things happening simultaneously. But if you look back at like say Joseph Goldstein and Tara Brach and Jack Kornfield, they brought like mindfulness and meditation to the West. That was simultaneously happening while breath work and Wim Hof started coming. Well, they came earlier, much earlier, but then like it really started taking off when people like Tim Ferriss started talking about it in some large audience. We were talking about float tanks earlier. That's like consciousness. It restores the brain waves into a comfortable state of mind. That's why it's so sticky for people. Rogan started talking about that. And then, so I think that their collective suffering level of society was like raising really fast in these alternative methods of restoring sanity, really.
Yeah.
We're growing simultaneously. And there was just like a lot of people coming together around like a similar problem to solve quickly. And, alcohol, like I'm a recovering alcoholic, like, I think I read a study yesterday that said only 45% of Gen Z drinks alcohol.
Yeah, I believe that.
You know, and it's like that's really low, and it's lowering, and people are using more psychedelic medicine, which is a reason for this, I think, too. But yeah, I think that's sort of when it started. This elevated consciousness was like there's a lot of collective suffering, I think. And then we were talking about politics. People are losing trust in institutions.
Yeah.
For good reason, too, right? Like we talked about this, 25% of our GDP is healthcare. Like no other first world nation has any kind of statistic like that.
Yeah.
We're really abusing human health for profit in this country in a really negligent way if we expect to be a dominant player on the global stage for a long period of time. Like,
yeah.
We need to care for our people in a healthy way and educate our children in a really important way, and kind of slow that behavior down. I think that's really important if we're going to continue to be a dominant player in the global scene.
Yeah, no doubt. What's like, so like I'm hearing all that, and it reminds me of when I was introduced to yoga, and the breath work was obviously a big part of yoga. And I was introduced to yoga as an athlete to be able to calm my heart rate and focus, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I wouldn't buy in. I couldn't buy in to, control your thoughts, talk to yourself nicely. Like I felt like I was lying, like I'm prepared, like mantras type stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then I was showed research of how if I'm breathing a certain way, then that's affecting my heart rate. And I pitch better when my heart rate is in this zone because I'm calmer and more focused. And that was like something that helped me buy in because there was science behind what I was doing. Like I needed that buy-in as a logic-based person.
Yeah.
What's the science that differentiates whatever's happening when you get into cold water and, your brain has a reaction versus the other things that, push and pull on the dopamine and serotonin in people's brains?
Before I answer that question, what's the optimal heart rate for throwing for you?
For me, it was probably around like 110 beats. Yeah.
100.
Yeah. 100.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had no clue. So that's really interesting to me. We should talk about that somewhere at some point. But
because that's like I'm up.
Right.
But like I'm not at like 140.
Right.
Where it's like, I'm like, this is where I'm sprinting. I'm at like 150, right? So I got to be up and I got to be aggressive and I want that adrenaline, but I don't want to lose control of the car.
Yeah, something like zone 2 heart rate.
Yeah.
Where you're like relaxed, you're turned on, but you're not going too hard. You're able to focus really clearly. That's cool.
Yeah, I would try and keep it like under 110 would be great, but like I often would be too high, 120, 130.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, so the science is truthfully way early, right?
Yeah.
People are talking about it a lot. There's some studies, but it's very early days in the science game.
Yeah.
The longest study is out of Finland, which is 20-year study. And, the statistics are really compelling for all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer, dementia, serious reductions in all those categories, right, of disease. Now, the question is why, right? And I think it's very similar to consistent exercise, to be honest, on the sauna side of things, where your heart rate's coming up in the sauna, veins and arteries are expanding, oxygen is perfusing deeper into tissue, joints, and your body's getting a mild cardiovascular exercise, which has all kinds of good benefits for your brain, right? But I don't claim to be a scientist. I'm not the best person to speak on this, but I'm doing better and better. But I always say, like, the science really is early. Like, the cold water therapy science, like, Susanna Soberg had a study. It had 8 people. It's not a good study, and one got thrown out, right? Like, that's one of the better studies that's out there, and it only had 7 people. Then there's cold water swimming studies, and those are really compelling. So let's just talk about that for a second. So if you're going arteries open and expansive, sweat, toxins coming out, all of those things, really beneficial. You're pushing through something hard, to try and get to a certain amount of time, ideally. Like, you don't need extreme culture is also really bad because, like, stress kills more people than anything.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you are quantifying every single thing, you're microanalyzing every single thing you do, you're obsessed with yourself and you're stressed out, most likely.
Yeah. No doubt.
So, like, I always tell people, like, in Sauna House, we don't really put a lot of clocks around. And people are always like, I want a clock by the cold plunge. I want to break my record. And it's like, legitimately, bro, like, there's no science that says being in a cold plunge for 3 minutes at 45 degrees or 6 minutes at 45 degrees is better for you. And in fact, hyperthermia and hypothermia are real things. You can permanently damage yourself like by going extreme on this.
It's good that you say something like this, because like that's the strongest argument I see against this stuff is like these people are just becoming too extreme. And then the stress goes up and like that's not what we're going for here, No,
we're on the recovery side, right? And on the recovery side, just like you were speaking on breathing and meditation, right? So I grew up an athlete too. My generation, like, no mindfulness training, all about turning on. Like, how do you get someone to perform at the highest level? Not how do you get someone to recover at the highest level. And that positive self-talk, mantras, breath work, mindfulness, the art of turning off is directly related to your ability to turn on. So can you let go of how long you're in the sauna? Who gives a shit if you were in there 14 minutes or 19 minutes?
Yeah, it's great perspective. Yeah.
Count your breaths in the cold plunge to create mindfulness. And, if you do a 5-second in and 5-second out, that's 10 seconds. You do that 6 times, that's a minute. Great. Now you're tracking your own time and connecting with your body at the same time. And so you're going to come through that experience, like, with the attitude of letting go instead of controlling and wanting to know your results and push the boundaries. So at Sauna House, we really encourage people to be intuitive with their body and listen to their body. And it's like, some days doing a cold plunge is super easy. Some days doing one is super hard. Women also have a reproductive system that's quite different than ours, and their temperature fluctuates throughout the month more than men's. And we wrote an awesome blog on that for women who want to go read about it. But, like, cold water therapy should be used differently for men and women. And I think where this is going, if the science is good, and we want to be a big part of the science as we have more stores, the science will be a little bit more prescriptive to who you are and what outcomes you're looking for and what kind of suffering you experience. Like, coming back to that, right? Like, if you're a performance athlete and you lift weights to grow muscle mass today, you don't want to get in the cold plunge for maybe 12 to 18 hours, or you're going to shut down muscle protein synthesis, and you're actually going to reduce your muscle mass if you do cold water therapy right after a heavy lifting session. But if you want to increase your gains on that day, just do sauna, right? And you will actually increase performance and gains by doing sauna after a heavy lift. And so I think it's going to get like more prescriptive. If you're trying to gain muscle mass and become like a heavier power lifter or something like that, I would put you on a protocol that says one thing. And if you're an endurance performance athlete, we would be working with your coach to put certain things in differently. And I've worked with athletes like that, and we've had great success in endurance sports so far. And really, it's just like an anecdotal field based on what I know and what that coach knows about that athlete and where we're mixing it in to their program. But these are top tier athletes, right? Those are the kind of people that do measure everything, and they should measure everything because their goal is to be a really high performance player or individual on whatever their sport is. But if your goal is to like feel good and live a good life, and like you're looking for restoration and connection and those types of things, like there's no heroes. Like you don't need to be pushing the limits on sauna and cold therapy because there is consequences.
It's funny, dude, because like to me, you kind of are an extreme person, and I don't mean that like in in a bad way. I'm not trying to, insult you. I just think it's a good thing when I meet people, and you're the type of person when you're in on something, like you're in on it. I can tell. The second I met you, I got that, right. If there was an interest of yours, you had an opinion and you had done the homework. Like you were all in, and almost an extreme way. Like this dude answered all the questions, which is awesome. And then I always think like, man, people that are like that often kind of get too narrow focused, or they can get so into something that it messes with the rest of their life. But I find you interesting because it seems like, I don't know if you're always this way, but it seems like you found some balance and perspective, where you're playing both sides.
My wife would be like, he's fucked. He's messed up. I've had this conversation with my team, right? Because like, what is sustainability and what is balance in the art of growing a company and a startup, right? Elon talks about it. All the high performers talk about it. Like, you're not going to get great results with average inputs, right? But so what is balance? And it's like, I think I live a very balanced lifestyle, but I do work a lot. When I'm not working, I'm with my kids. And if I'm not with my kids, I'm with my friends doing fitness, right? And like, those are pretty much the 3 buckets of my life. I don't watch TV. I don't cook really. I say I'm saving those for later in life. That's just the way I want to live. And to me, that's balance, right? Because I'm getting to spend time focusing on the things that I truly care about the most. I'm not seeking to live like, I do, yoga 15 hours a week. Like I do this, like I'm not trying to, balance doesn't equal time in my world. Balance is unique to, again, what your goals are as an individual, right? And like, I want to be an exceptional leader of my company. I want to run a great brand. I want to be the best dad I can be. And I know that in order to do those 2 things, that I need to do breath work, meditation, sauna cold plunge, sleep well, eat well, and exercise regularly. And so it's like, those are the buckets of my life. And to me, that feels very balanced. To a lot of other people, how I operate does not feel that balanced.
What do you think about, there's these like different health publications now that are finding, influential people and asking them like what their protocol is, like their longevity protocol or their health protocol, regimens, whatever it is. Do you have one of those? Like, do you, supplements or food and like, because to me, you're very learned in all these things. So it's probably hard to ignore it.
It is. It's difficult. Like, I'm the guy who like has a timer on his Wi-Fi so that the kids aren't getting EMF at night. Like, I'm the guy giving them fish oil as toddlers on the counter because I know that the data for fish oil and brain density is really compelling. But with myself, like, I'm not that rigid, honestly. Like, people, I love the phrase, like, strong opinions loosely held. And, like, I love it when my team proves me wrong and I'm like, nah, fuck it, we're going the other way. So I'm very comfortable changing my ideas. And with my diet, I just keep it simple. You know, like I wake up in the morning, I have a cup of black coffee. I like to make breakfast for my kids. Usually I'm up before them. Depends. I'm either working late at night or I'm working early in the morning because that's when I'm most productive. So depending on what cycle I'm on, like I might have 2 hours of work before the kids get up, or I might have 2 hours of work after the kids go to bed. But I like to make them breakfast and then I go to work, and I don't really eat usually. I like intermittent fasting. It works for me. I usually eat 2 meals a day, lots of vegetables, lots of fat, lots of protein. Try and take it easy on the sugar, the carbs, unless I'm training and I can like burn that. For me, it's really simple. And I really do believe like the quality of your life is about what you subtract from it, not what you add to it. And American culture just has that fully backwards. Like, other cultures do that intuitively. And I think that shows in the happiness indexes.
Yeah. Yeah. And in cold plunge sauna in particular, this is not actually something that's very new, you know. And talking about like our culture, happy indexes, these are things that have been making people happy around the world for like hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Why hasn't it taken off in America until like this point?
Yeah, it's an interesting history, right? Like I always say, like we all communally bathed somewhere, somehow, with all of our ancestors did. We evolved that way, and the communal bathing environments were crafted based on the natural environment most commonly. And there's, you know, ancient Asia has documents on how they used bathology. Like there's a whole study of bathology, and it's like time and temperature and water circuits. And then if you look at some of the old writings from like 9th century Austria, they were using cold water therapy to treat like depression, melancholy. And so every ancient civilization had their bathing culture, and it was just about what was there, you know. And the Finns are super proud of the sauna, but in all reality, it was like the bottom of the barrel bathing culture. They were nomadic herds people. They had very little resources. They built a box out of wood, and they threw hot stones in it so that they could have a place to take their garments off and wash. They would bring warm bowls of water in, and they had freezing cold water right there. So sauna, cold plunge, and Nordic culture was just like, that's what they had. They were not, you know, a advanced society like the Romans were, or, you know, in Turkey, for instance, that's like the most reminiscent design of ancient Rome and their bathing culture. So if you want to know what Roman bathing was like you can go to Turkey and see a lot of their culture. But we write blogs on the history of all of these places and their bathing cultures. Like Iceland's bathing culture is really fascinating. Post World War II, we invested a lot of, they and the United States invested into that economy to produce geothermal bathing pools. So they have hot springs, and now it's like one of their largest attractions in their entire nation is their bathing culture. They used it so that the kids could learn to swim because they were all sailors and they couldn't teach the kids to swim in the water so cold. And so they used geothermals to create pools and power schools. So it's like pools and schools was Iceland's bathing culture, right? And I think that's really cool. And I really love to celebrate the history of all the cultures. And what happened in the United States is there used to be thousands of communal bathhouses in New York here. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because there was no running water in all these big buildings, and everybody would do their manual labor all day. They'd be dirty, and they would go to a public bathhouse and cleanse themselves, and then they would go home. And people would gather there after work and connect with, you know, steel workers were talking to, you know, bread makers, and the community was gathering there. Different professions and trades all coming together to say hello to each other at the end of the day, to cleanse themselves before going home, oftentimes with all of their family members. And But then, the advent of running water started, and then the AIDS epidemic happened. And when that happened, certain bathhouse culture does have a sex stigma to it still to this day. And, it's just part of the culture and the history, going back to Rome once again, right? Like, when that happened though, like no one knew how you contracted AIDS, right? Like now everybody knows like, oh, this is how you get AIDS. That was not the case then. So people had this huge hygiene fear, right? Like, did you get it through saliva? Did you get it through the air? Did you get it only in sex? Like, what was it, right? No one knew. And so everyone stopped going to the bathhouses, and the bathhouses got horrible press. And so a lot of them closed. And again, the advent of running water, people were able to bathe at home much more efficiently. And so, it was just kind of a lost thing. And now it's coming back in full force because America loves health benefits, and health is like incredibly important. As we spoke to, chronic disease is skyrocketing, obesity is skyrocketing. All of these things people are suffering, right? And they're looking for ways to not suffer. And sauna and cold plunge just happens to be what I call an ancient tradition that really helps counterbalance the demands of modern day life.
Yeah. We are, at JDS, we are like users, right? Like we invested in Edge Theory because we liked that portable at home cold plunge. Joe uses it all the time. I have one. I use it all the time. Matt and PRC, like we all believe in hot cold therapy.
Yep.
What actually makes it an investable opportunity from your perspective?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys looked at it. I'm just kidding.
I mean, I can give you our stance. No, I will, but you first.
No, I mean, there's a huge market, right? Like the total addressable marketplace is huge, right? If you're putting in like recovery plus mental health plus physical chronic pain, and we can help all these groups of people in some way, the total addressable market is tremendous. It's a great counterbalance to technology, right? Like tech is valued at time on the tech, right? Well, now experiences in the real world, the value has gone up as we discussed. So what is that value? Why do people want to spend it this time? It's passive, it's social. You can do it cross-generationally. It's so common to see mothers and daughters there, fathers and sons there, catching up. Dad's in town. I'll take him to go do a sauna cold plunge. He's got a fake knee. Now he had a knee replacement or whatever. He's in pain. He can't go hiking up these steep mountains or whatever.
Yeah.
But, he can do this, and it's going to make him feel good. And we can spend community quality time together to catch up. So it's like a shared wellness experience that's approachable to mass market. And I think that that's what makes it super investable. I mean, it's a very difficult business to operate.
Yeah.
And grow, as you guys know. Like a lot of people didn't want to invest in me because my stores cost $3 to $5 million to develop, and they take a long time, and there's a lot of regulation in the pool industry.
But that's kind of your advantage as well, right? Like, I think that's something that the light bulbs kind of went off for us at JDS. It's like, I've talked to my dad. I'm like, I like these things. Should we go open one even before we met you?
Yeah. And
then we look at it, and it's like, man, this would be a pain in the ass to try and figure out.
Yeah.
And you kind of have the, toolkit.
We're figuring it out.
How to get it going. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a great team. We employ now a full-time architect and a full-time civil engineer, and they manage all of our projects. We have about $40 million worth of construction happening right now from now until the next 12 months. And so a lot of construction going on, but the infrastructure is a big deal. Like the power to power this many saunas, the water to power this many pools. Pool code is different in every state. It is challenging to navigate, and to do them really, anybody can put an infrared sauna and above ground cold pool in a room, and most likely it's not ADA compliant. Most likely it's not pool code compliant. But we're trying to invest in real sustainable infrastructure for the long term. We want to be an enduring brand. And I think that again, just like psychedelics, set and setting is so important, right? And we're trying to build beautiful, architecturally compelling spaces so that they can last for a really long period of time. And you just can't do that and cut all the corners.
Yeah. So you said 3 to 5 million it takes to build out a store. That doesn't leave somebody who's taking out a loan or investing their whole life into a business a ton of wiggle room.
No.
Did you building out your first store in Asheville?
Yeah.
First time going through it, did you make any mistakes? Were there any like accidental costs?
For sure. Yeah. I got myself into a situation I didn't know how to get myself out of, right? Like, except to keep going.
Yeah.
Asheville building was a cold, dark shell. So what that means in commercial real estate world is that it had walls and some windows, but no power, no water, no HVAC. And so we took it from basically a garage warehouse to what it is today. Mm-hmm. And I'm super proud of what we did, mm-hmm. but I didn't do certain things well, which, to do them well cost more. Yeah. So my first store was cheaper to build than these $3 to $5 million stores that we're building now. But mm-hmm. all the things from dehumidification to more floor drains to improved HVAC systems. What else? Anti-slip, it's actually really hard to keep a floor safe for the general public. All kinds of coatings and challenges. Floor coatings, like I've ground that floor coating off like 2 or 3 times. I did the original one myself downstairs. Like it was, when we did Sauna House Asheville, we did the upstairs first and we opened, and then I had the downstairs, which I couldn't afford to renovate at the time, but we got traction in the first 3-4 months. I was like, man, people love this. There's a lot of people coming. Like we need the downstairs open. And so I hand drew the design of downstairs.
Nice. Told
the city of Asheville that I was going to GC the project and that it was going to cost less than $30,000.
Wow.
And yeah. So I cut the concrete, dug the trenches, framed the walls with my friends, built the saunas with my friends, and hired some subs to do like drywall and electric and plumbing and stuff like that. But it was so like cool. Run and gun, man. And then we got open. The whole business got open about month 9. So that took us like 4 or 5 months, and we were like saw cutting at 5 a.m. before opening, and like mm-hmm. because we were open upstairs, so you couldn't just make all this noise downstairs. So we were like just acting crazy. Early mornings, late nights, all day Wednesdays. We renovated, got it all open, and then 5 months later, or 3-4 months later, COVID. So mm-hmm. That was a really challenging period of my life, to be honest.
I bet.
Yeah, we had one daughter at the time. We found out we were pregnant with our second daughter just before closing for COVID. We had been working on the company then for 2.5 years. Like I was taking my first paychecks just before closing, and
wow.
Yeah, it was a tough time, and I'm really grateful to our community for coming back to use our space after COVID, and to government programs for helping us endure mm-hmm. that time period.
10,000 uniques
tough.
Last year.
Yeah, the 10,000 uniques last year, and now $40 million of construction in the pipeline, and an investment with you guys, and here we go.
Yeah. So to me, it sounds kind of like, I think about franchise models, and it's part of it obviously is your buying ability to use a brand name, and a brand name around the country can carry a ton of weight.
Yeah.
Obviously then it's like, operations, procedures, supply chain stuff that can be beneficial. But like the naive voice in my head is kind of like, well, why doesn't somebody go do this themselves? And I think part of the big thing for somebody who's thinking about these is Andrew went and solved a lot of the problems.
Yeah.
And is going to kind of help set me up where, my understanding of your business is that's the fight. If you fight through, you identify the right location, you build it properly for, a stomachable cost, then, your business gets simpler. It's like you've put it before where you do laundry, you clean, you make people happy. You know, you
Yeah.
set a vibe.
Yeah.
But you have to get to that point.
Yeah, you do. And it is hard to get there, you know, because they're hard to finance. Financing is just really hard right now, period. So it's like we help people with financing. Franchise models are more financeable than mom and pop stores, right? If you bring a business plan to a bank, it's the same as mine. You're going to have a really hard time getting lending unless you have like a really high net worth individual that the bank has a great relationship with behind you. And yeah, the expertise and the know-how, like we employ a full-time architect and engineer on our team. They interview contractors, they interview your architects, they interview all your trade experts. They make sure your projects are dialed in. We help people vet real estate, negotiate LOIs. Like these are huge investments. Like you're signing a 10-year lease that might have $2 to $3 million of lease liability on the line, personal guarantees on loans and leases. And so having the support of our team, like, you know, I hate the word franchise, right? Like I'm an entrepreneur, I'm creative, like I don't like it, but I love business owners and I love entrepreneurs. And what we're doing is helping people be entrepreneurs, represent their local community and reduce their risk. And we help them with all kinds of stuff. So it was really fun, like coming from my sports background to say like, hey, why don't you try and look at this positively, Andrew? Like you build a team of people and those team of people are coaches for all your players who are your operators. And so like, you know, when we close a deal with a franchise partner, like I'm on the ground looking at real estate with Chris on our team. Peter and Chris are doing test fits in-house. So you're not wasting money on architecture with like some other outside firm yet. We're doing a feasibility analysis. We're checking all the high risk problems that might be associated with that piece of real estate. We're running analytics with a powerful software product we use to make sure the customer is there, they have access, they have what they need, you know, that it's good market. And then from there, we're riding along the entire construction process, and then hands over to like Gavin and the marketing team, you know, and they like have huge, robust like pre-launch marketing strategy built out. All these things that the owner needs to do or should we recommend doing in order to be successful with your pre-launch. Then Jen, who's now my co-founder, she was my first employee to co-founder. She's awesome. She'll come on the ground with the operations team, help you hire your staff, train your GM, be a constant resource for the GM, right? Like the GM has access to our corporate team all the time. And yeah, with all these coaches in all these very challenging areas of the business, you know, it's stressful enough to put $2 to $3 million, $4 million on the line. But having our team there to make sure you're checking boxes and doing all those things along the way, it lets the operator really start to focus. Like once they get done construction and they're through financing, those are really hard parts.
Yeah.
It really gets down to like, yes, hire people, clean, do maintenance, and we make people happy, right? So it is not the most complicated business to operate, I wouldn't say, but it is difficult to do well in all areas simultaneously. And I think that that's what we've really perfected.
So what's step one? I mean, we here on Inside Moves don't have you know, tens of thousands of viewers quite yet.
Yeah.
But hopefully somebody watches this and is interested.
Yeah.
What's step one to getting that ball rolling? Because that seems like a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, you just hit up Lane at saunahouse.com. Lane's our franchise sales guy, and we do all of our franchise sales in-house. And you'll end up talking to me and Jen really quickly after talking with Lane if you're financially qualified and we like your credentials for being an operating partner of ours. And then we'll invite you to Asheville to spend quality time with us, use the space in the facility. We call that Discovery Day in franchise world. And after Discovery Day, we give people 2 weeks. It's like, does it feel like a hell yes or no? You know, and after the Discovery Day, we tell them first if it's a hell yes for us, right? And we're like, yes, we would take you on as a partner. You have 2 weeks until we want to know whether you're in on this or not, because we all have things to do. And you should intuitively know by that point in the process, like if this is what you really want to do.
Right. Right. Are there franchises that, I'm sure the answer is yes,
Yeah.
but which franchises, I guess,
Yeah.
have you studied and been like,
Oh yeah.
this works, this is smart, and then this is something that's maybe going to sell a bunch of franchises but not be sustainable?
Yeah, it's funny. I study franchises and corporations, like, because like it's not just franchising that's similar to us; it's corporate growth too. So some are corporations, some are franchise. Urban Air Jump Park, the trampoline company, is uniquely similar. They have a huge, expensive build out. $3 to $10 million to open one of those stores. Almost no failure, which is something I want to have as well. Like a lot of other franchises have a 30-40% failure rate.
Wow.
And that's just something I have absolutely no fucking interest in doing.
Yeah.
And so I aspire to be like them. They have similar challenges with big build outs, huge capital improvements. And so I've looked a lot at Urban Air Jump Park model, spent time with their team and development team. I've also looked at automotive industry. They do a lot of ground up new builds. It's unique infrastructure that serves a purpose. So thinking of like Valvoline or oil change centers, things like that. Ground up new build car wash brands like Mr. Car Wash, very interesting to me. Very similar kind of cost and business model in a lot of ways. And, they have challenging projects, like a lot of infrastructure, unique equipment, only really can do one thing with my space when I'm done with it. And so I've studied a lot of those kinds of companies.
Matt Aronson had I thought, pretty smart thing to say. And like hearing you describe that, it's a little different. But he talked about Starbucks.
Yeah.
And his thing was, in Europe, coffee was like something that we got together and appreciated, and you wanted a particular and effort-filled coffee.
Yep.
And in America, that Howard Schultz's aha moment was there's a growing demand for this.
Yep.
We have this like fast in a pot coffee, and there's no buddy answering this desire.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's kind of what's going on with Sauna House, where
100%.
it's this thing that existed elsewhere, and now there's demand for it in America.
Yeah.
So it's a little different from.
No, I've talked to Matt about that,
Yeah.
and there is a lot of similarities, especially because coffee is a third place. The most ancient third places of society are coffee and tea houses and bathhouses.
Yeah.
So, and the appreciation for what they are in the craft is exactly the thing, right? And it was a huge emergence in the U.S. economy, and now we have coffee houses everywhere, and like they're huge community third places all over our country. And I'm extraordinarily confident that bathing culture is going to do the same thing. So I'm really excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, I mean that's like our thesis at JDS, right? It's everything that we talked about. This growing awareness. I saw a Fit Insider statistic of like 80% of consumers now are prioritizing wellness as like, number 5, top 5 things that they're buying. And, we don't think that's going to change as like this generation ages.
No.
And it feels like now is kind of the time where something like Sauna House can really be a national brand. You sold 16 franchises?
16 territories, yeah.
Yeah, 16. Yeah. And like, where do you think this goes? Like how close can you put them together? Like how many people can go in these? Like, I'm sure you forecasted it, right? Like,
well, I mean, we've played with certain things. I've studied other markets globally, and I think I understand, like, within some degree, what the density will look like per capita of our types of spaces. But it's yet to be determined. It's really the Wild West. There's a lot of different shapes and sizes coming online of what we do. And there's huge facilities, there's tiny facilities, there's, there are a lot of different shapes and sizes, but I think what Sauna House does exceptionally well is like a communal bathing space and private bathing spaces that are a great experience at a great price. And I think that that's what we want to do. We want to be we want to be everybody's go-to place, and we're developing our custom software now. And my goal is to build sauna houses in every major city in the country and a lot of small cities in the country. And I think that right now there's something like maybe 350 mineral bathing kind of spas in the U.S. market. And I think that over the next 10 years, there'll be something like 5,000 if we hit the density levels that we see in Europe and Asia kind of thing. So I want to be a large part of that movement. And I feel truly lucky. Like the bathing culture industry in the U.S., it's very small, and all of us know each other. We're on like a group thread. Like, there's some really cool and inspiring stuff coming in. And I look forward to just trying to be a great innovator in the space and serve the customer in a way that is just the way I like to do it. Like I like simple, not enough. It should be accessible and approachable for everyone. Not too much, not too little. The KISS principle is how I built the first one. Like keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
And that's how I want to run the future of our brand.
So where's like your particular role fit in this? So before we got the cameras rolling, we were talking about influential people.
Yeah.
People that have an audience. I think, JDS thinks that Sauna House could be, a very influential brand.
Yep.
You're the founder. But we also talked about, the drawbacks or advantages and disadvantages of being at the helm of something that does go big, like hopefully Sauna House will.
Yeah.
How do you see yourself progressing with this company?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to be the chief executive officer so long as I continue to serve the company's needs, right? Like, we don't talk a lot about job titles at Sauna House. We have them just because it makes sense in society to do so. But we talk about company needs and value, right? And the company has needs, and if you can provide value to fulfill those needs for the company, then you're always going to have a job at Sauna House, right? And it's sometimes intuitive. It's sometimes me who shows everyone like, hey, we have a need for this. Does anybody have the skills to provide the value we need to fill this need, right? And I look at myself no differently. I mean, I told my board advisor, Nathan Edgerly, who's like a really good friend and a very good businessman and very thoughtful and intellectually curious man. And I'm really lucky to be around him all the time. And I told him one of my worst fears, like, man, I don't know if I'm like the right person to run this company. Like, it's your job to tell me when I'm no longer serving the company's needs or I'm not providing the value that the company needs from me. And I'm a startup founder. Like, I'm eccentric. I have a lot of energy. I like design. I like brand. I like marketing and sales.
I could see you being though like a good public figure. I could see it.
Yeah, I want to hang out and talk on behalf of the brand and design really cool new stuff. But once the system gets bigger and bigger, like, we're going to need someone who, like, we're already doing that. We're bringing in like high-level CFO this year, right, to help professionalize the business, to help me. But I love being at the helm, and I like being really hands-on. Like, I'm not afraid to go talk to the operations team or the marketing team or the front of house or like anybody. I really want to know what the customer wants. I'm very curious about where this is going. And so I see myself as a chief executive officer for quite some time, and then hopefully just hanging out on the board with a new chief executive officer at some point along that path. But yeah, I have no... I don't know. Like, right now I'm having a lot of fun and there's a lot of growth opportunities for me. Like, I'm learning how to be a better public speaker. I'm attending leadership schools, and I'm getting the opportunity to really learn and grow as an individual. And I'm trying to keep up with those needs of the business. Like, I want to become the person the business needs because it's fun and exciting and challenging for me to get better at something like this. And so I'm going to do that as long as it's fulfilling and rewarding and serves the company how the company deserves to be served. Yeah.
I think when people, set goals and then they crush them, they always like turn to like what's next, right? And to me, it sounds like Sauna House, and we're all convinced that you're extremely committed to this until you're going to see this to where you want to see it to.
Yep.
But to me, it sounds like it's part of something bigger to you, like a set of values.
Yeah.
The wellness topic in general. Is it like, what else is going on in your head? Is there like, you've called yourself a serial entrepreneur before.
Yeah.
Is this a piece of something that's bigger, or is this all that's kind of in your crosshairs right now?
I don't know. There's other stuff, right?
Yeah.
But like nothing that can hold my attention really right now.
Yeah.
I think that I'd like to join you guys in investing, to be honest. Like, I think that I could add a lot of value and identify companies that are doing really cool stuff. My life's mission really is just to advance civilizations like mental health and physical well-being, right? And so any way that I can see ways that I can add value to that mission, then I'll do it, And I think that if Sauna House does reach the levels of success that I believe it will, then I'll end up with the means to be able to deploy capital into places to fulfill that mission further. But right now I've still got a lot of work to do to get there.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I think that, people like you eventually do make the best investors, I came out of school, joined JDS Sports, was never a part of like a startup from the ground up. And sometimes that gives me imposter syndrome. I'm not making the final investment decisions at JDS, right? That's not how it works. I'm supporting, our partners who all have had experience growing something themselves and has turned them into great investors. But yeah, I could totally see, and it's so much fun, dude. Like, we get to see so many different things, meet so many people like you that are so hyper-focused on something, and then try and help them. It's really cool. Yeah.
Well, if you want some operator experience, I think we can get you a sauna house to run. And
we need one in New Jersey. we definitely need one in New Jersey. I just moved to a town called Red Bank.
Cool.
So I go to a Lifetime Fitness.
Yeah.
And
Lifetime's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. And I wonder, do you put one right next to a Lifetime? Is this like your direct competition?
Yeah, that's a huge part of my job, is to determine like who is a real competitor.
Yeah.
Because you have sauna cold plunge coming into hotel space, you have it coming into multifamily, you have it coming into the big box gyms. What you see around the world is like some challenges when you do this, which is why I like to be like solely focused on like what we do, and we're not trying to go into multifamily right now or big box gym, right? Like, yeah, there's certain things that I think that are counter to that, and so I don't see us going right next to a Lifetime. I think that we can all coexist, and there's a lot to go around. But for sure, I'm very curious, right? Because they are going to take some portion of the market, right? It's great when Lifetime invests $100 million into a facility and can offer you, what's your membership there per month?
So I get it at a discount, luckily, but it's like $300.
Yeah, it's $300, right? Yeah. And I don't even do an all-inclusive membership for $300 a month.
No,
right?
I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it if I couldn't get it for the discount.
Yeah. I'm much more on the experience side, and that's more on the like all-in kind of group fitness combined with this, combined with that. But they're doing a lot of things, but they're not doing anything exceptionally well, I would say. And I'm trying to do sauna bathing exceptionally well. And so I think the value of that experience will be slightly higher and the price will be different. But I always say this. It's like people love to eat at home, right? They cook and eat at home, but it's an experience to go out to eat. And so I'm starting to stay in the experience world. And just like restaurants, there's lots of different ethnicities and cuisine types and price points of that. And you're going to frequent certain ones more and less. Bathing culture is similar, where you're going to have kind of lower priced opportunities, mid-tier, inclusive opportunities, than the experiential opportunities that are a little higher price point. And so it's going to be fun to see how the industry evolves like that. So
before I let you go then, let's hypothetical and say I was looking for a franchise location in New Jersey. like what would be some pointers for what I could bring to you guys that might be a good idea?
Like for location?
Location, yeah. Building, like what kind of real estate box should I be looking in?
Yeah, for Sauna House, we like the hard stuff to develop.
Yeah.
Adaptive, historical reuse stuff.
Yeah.
But, we kind of, we would run it through software, and our team does most of the real estate looking and searching, and we don't even talk to potential buyers about that until after they sign, because we're like, we'll do research after we date and determine whether we want to get into a 10-year partnership.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So everybody always wants to talk about real estate right away. Real estate is fun, Zillow and everybody's obsessed with real estate shopping, but it's commercial real estate could not be more different than residential. It is really the Wild West, and it's quite complicated, and you can make decisions that ruin your life. Yeah. And so it's our job to vet these opportunities and protect our partners. But
gotcha.
You'd be looking for some old stuff.
Old stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. All right. Well, thank you for coming all the way up. Is there anything that, I didn't ask you or we didn't cover that you want to talk about before we turn these cameras off?
We didn't cover two things. One, how's your hamstring doing?
Hamstring's doing better. Definitely. Okay. Lots of cold therapy.
Two, you moved in with your girlfriend?
Yes, I did.
You guys having fun?
It's going really well. I would say this is month 2 of our 12-month test run.
All right, you're doing dishes, closing cabinets, and keeping the bathroom tidy?
I'm learning a lot about life and the male-female coexistence.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I'm really excited for you in that
good.
Next step. That's a really exciting
Thank you.
Part of life. So
it's going great.
Next time I see you, I'll be sure to check in.
Yeah, please check in. And any excuses to get me out of the apartment, welcomed.
Cool. Absolutely. We can go spend time at the co-working space and then go sauna bathe.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, Carl.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right.